Thanks very much. I was at my niece's wedding about a month ago, and someone asked me what I did. I said, I'm working at a new startup called Human Longevity. He said, stop right there and send me the damn pills. Okay? I don't have a pill, so I'm sorry to disappoint you. I'm a physician. I started my career working on bacterial diseases at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, or CDC, until one morning I received a call from my mom saying that my father had sudden cardiac death the evening before. He was 60 years of age, no previous known health problem. I changed the course of my professional focus at that point to work on evolving our struggling health and healthcare systems to cohesive systems that work primarily on improving the health of populations at scale. So we didn't have preventable early deaths like my father's. So over the last 15 years, I've been working on these health systems, and I'm going to suggest to you that whether you're in government or you're working at an incumbent private sector organization, and I've tried this in both places, it's a very difficult task, and these infrastructures are very difficult to change from their legacy sort of sick care reactive postures. And I've come to an interesting conclusion, and that is that the bacterial disease work that I did before my father's death may actually be the solution to evolving the health and healthcare systems. Let me explain. Over the last 30 years, we have seen an extraordinary genomic revolution in bacteriology. Unless you've been working in the field, you may have not recognized it. But genomics has changed every aspect of bacteriology, the way we identify bacteria, the way we study them, the way that we understand their methods of infecting humans. And the punchline for this is that we humans are next. And in fact, while technology over the last 30 years has been adequate to revolutionize bacteria, it has just become adequate to revolutionize human health and the practice of medicine. No one has done more to get us to this point than Craig Venter, who's the CEO and co-founder of Human Longevity. In 1995, he fully sequenced the first free living life form, a bacteria, Haemophilus influenza. On June 26th of 2000, he stood with Tony Blair and Bill Clinton to announce the first full human genome sequence. In 2005, he and his team discovered and first published on the human microbiome. In 2007, he published the first full human diploid sequence, where we look at both the maternal and paternal contributions to the DNA. And then finally, in 2010, and this is highly relevant, he announced the creation of synthetic life. And this book describes that journey and alludes to a very special property of DNA. And it's not only that the characteristic of this material lends itself to becoming digital, it also is going to provide an incredible prognostic opportunity for human health and disease. Peter Diamandis is another one of our co-founders. This is a schematic from his recent book called Bold. And Clive actually alluded to this pattern that we see when things get on this exponential digital curve. We see them go from digitized through a deceptive period. And I would argue that since about 2000, when the first full human genome was published, till about now, we've been in a deceptive period, thinking that maybe genomics was hyped, and that it's really not going to change human health. We're just now through that deceptive period, and we're going to get on a track where I predict that these legacy government healthcare infrastructures, legacy incumbent healthcare systems are going to be profoundly disrupted by this technology and this science. And we're going to get up very quickly on a dematerialized, demonetized, and democratized plane with the full human genome sequence. The four trends that are converging to create the opportunity that we're trying to exploit at human longevity are really the radically decreased sequencing cost, and it's hard to understand or conceptualize how much things have changed. When Craig did the first full human genome sequence in 2000, 2001, he invested $100 million of private capital to do that. It took 9 months to do a single sequence. And at that time, it was the third largest civilian computer effort in the world. Costs are now approaching $1,000. They're not quite $1,000, and dropping faster than the rate of slope of Moore's law. But it's not only that, it's computational power. And we have just come to the point where cloud-based compute power is inexpensive enough to handle the volume of data that we're creating with whole genome sequencing. And finally, while machine learning is not new, we haven't had the availability of large-scale genomic sequencing data and the availability of compute power to handle those data to really exploit machine learning and deep learning methodologies. Of course, these three trends sit in a sea of struggling transition from volume-based healthcare to value-based healthcare. We think we can accelerate that trend in value-based care. Here's the highly secret human longevity business plan I'm sharing with all of you today. And it's fairly simple to describe, but of course challenging to execute. What we are doing is building integrated health records at large scale that include high quality whole genome sequencing, the full metagenomic characterization of the microbiome and metabolomics, along with as much clinical or phenotype metadata that we can collect with those specimens. We're building a cloud-based architecture to house that information and subjecting it to machine learning, hypothesis-free data analytics, with the expectation that we can radically, disruptively accelerate high-quality hypotheses that are going to revolutionize our rate of discovery for new therapeutics, new diagnostics, and new models for medical care. A little primer on sequencing. So you hear a lot of people talking about genomics right now, and there's a lot of mixed messages about what people are actually doing. So I want to clarify that when people talking about genotyping and single nucleotide polymorphisms, we are talking about looking at very small numbers of bases in the complete genome. Up to what 23andMe is doing, they're doing a 1 million single nucleotide polymorphism chip. Some of the other companies that you may be hearing about, Foundation Medicine is looking at 200 to 300 genes in the genome, all the way up to whole exome sequencing, looking at 20 to 30,000 genes. Even that represents less than 2% of the entire genome. We at Human Longevity are looking at all 3.2 billion base pairs and working on getting to full haplotype phasing so that we can look at 6.4 billion base pairs. And there's a lot of last mile work to do to convert some of the current research standards for whole genome sequencing into clinical grade standards. One of the revolutions, or one of the genomic revolutions in bacteriology, has brought us this new fundamental insight in human health, and that is the microbiome, that we are 10-to-1 microorganism over human cells. And all of that genetic complexity at the bacterial level and the human level is in constant interaction and flux. We have the first opportunity ever to begin to seriously explore this interaction in the context of health and disease. We currently have the world's largest human genome sequencing center. As of the end of last year, we were processing we had the capacity to process 35,000 full human genomes per year. By the end of this calendar year, we'll be up to 100,000 genomes per year. Our target and our business planning is built around getting to 5 million, or getting to 1 million integrated health records within 5 years. Like to see that number higher. And it may be. We're using whatever we consider the best platform to be, and we're agnostic. Currently, we're using the Illumina HiSeq X10s, as well as Pacific Biosciences or PacBio's long sequence read technology. But we will shift as new technologies become available and make this effort less expensive. So we will be generating a number of genome-related products, but again, that's not our focus. Our focus is not being a fee-for-service sequencing operation. Our focus is to build complete integrated health records in order to interrogate and fully understand, fully interpret all the meaning in the whole human genome. And we are at the beginning of that process. The potential scale of disruption of this approach is huge. Certainly in the $1 trillion plus pharmaceutical market, the $3 trillion plus healthcare market, as well as the smaller but very important diagnostic market. We've already seen early evidence of what genomics can deliver to drug development and diagnostics development. But we feel that these examples are purely tip of the iceberg phenomenon. One of the things we're doing is building a direct medical services platform attached to our informatics infrastructure. We think it's critical to build an example of what we think care can and should look like in this new information environment that we're creating. The other reason that we're doing this is because no matter where you look, whether it's in pharmaceutical clinical trials or in publicly funded clinical trials, or certainly in the feral healthcare world, the phenotype data that are available for us to use to interrogate and understand the genome are imperfect. So another purpose of building this direct medical services platform that we call a health hub is to define and continuously evolve what we consider to be a 21st century description of the full human, digital description of the full human phenotype. And very importantly, and some of our speakers already today and following me are going to talk about some of the remote sensors that are going to be critical for us to fully interrogate and understand the information that's in our genome. As our last speaker mentioned, this model is not going to fit into the current healthcare financing system. So we are talking a bit about it as a Tesla meets Tom's shoes model, if you will. So trying to identify a premium price point with high net worth individuals that can help fund our research to develop this model, but at the same time pricing it at a level that we can give away sets of services to people that would be that would really benefit from these services but would not be able to routinely afford them. So I want to make a comment about our analytics approach. We hired a guy by the name of Franz Ock, who is arguably the best machine learning guy at Google, spent the last 10 years developing Google Translate. And we like the metaphor very much for what we're doing at Human Longevity. So Franz built the ability to use machine learning to translate 90 different languages back and forth and across each other and deliver those results to a handheld device in less than 400 milliseconds. What we're asking Franz to do, and we've built a team and an office in Mountain View to do this, is to translate the language of biology in the form of sequence data into the language of health and disease in the form of clinical phenotypes. And to be able to go back and forth in doing that. And so from this effort, we believe that we have the potential to generate as many important health and disease insights as has been developed in the last 100 years within the next 10 years. And that by doing that and addressing the major causes of or the major areas of unmet medical need, we will extend high performance, healthy lifespan. So I'll close by just sharing that my daughter is graduating, my oldest daughter is graduating from university next month. My father, if he were alive, would be 78 years of age. Of course, it's disappointing he won't be there at that event. But I'm encouraged that I think we're on the verge of having lots more grandfathers and grandmothers at the special events of all of our lives as genomics begins the process of revolutionizing human health and the practice of medicine and opens the door to the next steps of synthetic biology and regenerative medicine. It's going to be an extraordinarily exciting ride. I really appreciate your attention today. Thank you very much.
It's a pretty big ambition, Brad, and most startups here are not thinking along the 10, 20-year timescale. But how long before you think the work you're doing will start to have an applied impact on humans?
I can share with you that we're just approaching sort of the 10,000 genome scale, where we're building out integrated health records for all these 10,000 whole human genomes. And we're already starting to have exciting discoveries. We've had a lot of debate with investors and with the leadership team about when on the ramp up do you really start to see this acceleration of insight. And it's probably, the consensus answer that we most typically agree on is probably in the 100,000 range. So I think we need to get up higher on the curve. And I think 1 million would be better. And this has been part of the problem with the genomic studies that have been done to date. None of them have been able to get high enough up in numbers to really leverage our understanding of the genome or our ability to make insights.
And Google has its own longevity project. It's backing companies like Calico. How does their approach differ from your approach?
Of course, Calico has not been extremely public about what they're doing, but it appears that they're taking a more traditional pharmacologic approach and addressing root causes of aging as a potentially useful area of exploration and drug development. We think that's great. And if they find something, we'll be first in line to be part of that. We think we can help identify some of those targets for them. But we're going to try to address current medical needs as well as identifying new targets for root causes of aging as our primary strategy.
And one more question. It's interesting that you have a machine learning expert who built a consumer-focused translation tool working on this. Often you find innovation comes from two different disciplines clashing. How far do you think the medical establishment needs to be working with people from completely unrelated disciplines?
Yeah, I think, as you allude to, this is an extremely healthy behavior in order to get the kind of new thinking and innovation we need into healthcare. And I think this is going to, there's been a lot of talk about big data in healthcare. I actually think, genomics is going to end up being the biggest data of big data in healthcare. And it's going to bring along with it everything else and sort of accelerate or supercharge the rest of the activities in this field. And I think having Franz do this work with us at Human Longevity gives that process a huge amount of credibility.
Brad, thanks for joining us.
Appreciate that.